Hello and welcome to yet another video. This is the second episode in which Uzumaki Naruto and his team time travel to the past. Unfortunately, I don't have a link to the author's profile. If you have their profile, DM me on Discord. Please like and subscribe to show your support. Let's get the show started. Why am I here? Sasuke asked himself this as he looked over the empty training grounds his team always used. They'd agreed to do their own thing, which worked out perfectly for him and what he needed to get done, but here he was regardless. He had a single shadow clone at home, working on nothing but chakra control. As always, he spared an exasperated thought for his chakra battery of a friend. Though the concept was quite simple, it really took a stupid amount of chakra to allow the technique to work at all. The blonde wasn't even using the fox yet. Ridiculous. That being said, all of his own signature techniques that were based off of the Chidori were out the window. Not only would they be tough to pull off as he simply couldn't perform them around anyone without raising some awkward questions. Hopefully Kakashi would teach it to him after seeing his chakra nature affinity. In a way though he was pleased by the problem. His goal was to become exceedingly strong by continuing to develop and perfect aspects of his kit that weren't there. Of the three basic schools of shinobi technique, he had comfortably excelled with ninjutsu and taijutsu. While his chakra capacity was nowhere near that of his blonde friend, it was still fairly large, and his control more than made up for whatever he lacked in quantity. His Sharingan had evolved to such levels that he relied on it almost exclusively for dealing with the most dangerous opponents. That said, his genjutsu ability for a member of the Uchiha clan was downright average. His brother was an S-ranked, flee-on-sight missing nin from his genjutsu alone. Half-blind and with relatively low chakra capacity, Itachi Uchiha was one of the strongest shinobi alive. Naturally, Sasuke wanted to be a badass like his brother, just a whole lot better on top of that. How else would he be able to save him? Too bad he didn't really know how to fast-track genjutsu training. Though if he recalled correctly, one of the rookie teams had the village's most reputed genjutsu user as a sensei. Maybe I should spend some time with them, he mused, coming to a decision rather quickly. The woman would no doubt refuse to train him, so it was just a matter of convincing her that it was worth her time. And that meant he would need to provide something of equal or greater value. A satisfied smile found its way easily to his face. Good thing he was from the future, wasn't it? You're back. Hi, Kurama. Naruto sat in the seal with his back to one of the massive bars of the cage, head tilted back to allow himself to meet the gaze of the Kyuubi. The massive demon fox looked down at him with narrowed eyes but otherwise said nothing else. The boy visited him every day. He had been doing so since the day when he'd suddenly entered the seal space, spoke of time travel, and finally loosened the seal, deepening the connection between them. As on that day he always entered the cage. He displayed no fear for his mind or life. It had taken some time but the Kyuubi had actually begun to understand that it wasn't insanity or reckless bravado. The stupid kid actually trusted him. Genuinely, he believed they were close friends. Of course, he admitted that the fox was not the friend he'd left behind in the future, but Naruto said he believed that they were the same at their core and that's what mattered. So he kept doing absolutely stupid things like putting his existence in the proverbial hand of a species-crushing entity of chakra. Quite frankly, it was infuriating. What nonsense have you brought to me today? Kurama asked in a bored tone from his relaxed position. Originally he'd imposed his massive height on the diminutive boy, but now he couldn't be bothered anymore. He could still swat the kid on a whim if he wanted to, and that's what mattered in the end. I've loosened the seal as much as I can without making Dad show up to stop me, said Naruto. Honestly, I think the only reason he hasn't so far is because he knows that I'm actually from the future and can handle it. Do you want a pat on the back? Kurama said with a dangerous smile, bringing one of his massive hands around with a surge of water and positioning it just to his right. It was comical how much it dwarfed him. I'll be sure to congratulate you thoroughly. Maybe another time, Naruto said with a chuckle, unfazed by the casual premeditated murder plot. I wanted to start training with your chakra seriously. And why should I allow that? So that your container is known as the greatest of the 9? Naruto said slowly, as if the fox were asking him a trick question. Gaara would lose against me in a fight, but when it comes to Shikaku I can't say the same thing. The blonde gave him a knowing smirk. You really want to lose out to a one-tailed, psychotic tanuki? Why bother asking pointless questions, time traveler? Kurama scowled, letting his hand fall back down with some force. If you are as knowledgeable as you are, then simply take my chakra as you want and be done with it. Leave me in peace so I can be released when you inevitably die. Come on, Kurama, I'm not like that. Naruto's expression fell. Kurama scowled as the boy's emotional turmoil rolled through his consciousness. They'd always been connected at a small level. He could tell what was happening around the boy to an extent. But whatever Naruto had done to the seal had opened things up quite a bit more. For a being that had been trapped for decades, despite being a fraction of his life, it was like a breath of fresh air. Unfortunately, that fresh air stank of loss. Naruto often spoke to him of the friends he had in the future. Of the bonds he'd forged and battles he'd won against loneliness. Now his work was completely undone. Without a doubt Kurama had little care for the boy's situation, but he at least understood it. What do I need to do for us to start being friends? Naruto demanded suddenly. Getting to his feet. Get me out of this stupid cage, Kurama spat, sitting up at his full height. Fine. Naruto walked out of the cage, faced the seal paper with a determined look, and grabbed it. In that moment several things happened. The first was that Kurama lost his sense of sight. It wasn't that he couldn't see because it was dark. No, it was as if he had no eyes at all. Or that there simply was nothing for him to see. Brat. His voice died quickly in the void with nothing to bounce off of. Nothing happened. Next time I see him I'll. But Kurama's rant died off as something caught his attention. Something he'd not have ever been expecting. A tuft of grass. It was all he could see. Not his body or anything else. Just the little patch of grass. Without sight he reached out and brushed it. Another one was suddenly behind it, drawing him to it without hesitation. Another, this one considerably larger. There was a shrub with the next one. Was that a tiny animal? What? All at once it was like he stepped out of a shadow and into the light. A forest clearing with nearby running water. The sounds of nature surrounding him. A massive torii gate at one end. Lush grass and patches of dirt filled the area around the trees. Small animals moved about without concern for the immense fox that had just entered the space. There was plenty of space for him to lay down. And there, sitting on a rock in the center, was Naruto. You look like shit. Naruto looked up in exhaustion, one hand on his head. You know, that was way harder than I remember it being, he said with a grimace. Though to be fair, we'd been through a lot before doing it together. Damn, that's a bad headache. This is the seal space. Yeah, you've got the seal around your neck. It was the easiest thing I could do, Naruto explained, pointing to Kurama's neck. Kurama lifted a hand to find that he was actually wearing a collar of large wooden beads. They weren't discomforting, though the thought of having a collar at all was certainly one that did not sit well with him. Look, Naruto said in annoyance. You want to go back to the leaky sewer cage? 'Cause now that I got this to work I definitely don't. No. He really didn't want to say it, but he was a sentient natural disaster, not ungrateful. Thank you. You're welcome. Can we be friends now? Sage kill me. Sure, Kurama said in a lifeless voice, deadpanning at the now ecstatic blonde. Yes. Naturo did a little dance on the rock. Let's practice with the chakra cloak on the road. On the road? Kurama repeated in surprise. Where are you taking us? We're sneaking off to wave for a bit. We've got 2 weeks before Kakashi-sensei gets back and I've got some friends to save. Asuma-sensei, this is Sakura, I asked her to join us for training today. That's okay, right? Good morning, she greeted the smoking Jonin politely. You're one of Kakashi's kids, right? He said with a nod, scratching his beard. In thought. Shouldn't you be with him? Kakashi-sensei is on an extended mission, so my team is all doing their own thing, she replied. Ino sputtered in indignation. Sakura, you're telling me we could have invited Sasuke-kun and we didn't? The time traveler put a hand to her mouth to cover a giggle. Honestly, she should have rekindled their friendship years ago. The idea to approach Ino about joining her team for training was a stroke of brilliance on her part. She needed a place to develop her non-medical style, and 3 fellow genin with a Jonin sensei was the perfect option. Being with Ino just allowed her to spend time with her friend as well. Also, she was hoping to give her friends a reality check sooner, rather than later. He's training alone. We all are. Kakashi-sensei said he'd show us something nice if we impressed him. He knows quite a bit. Sakura considered Asuma before continuing, have you been taking advantage of your sensei, Ino? He looks pretty strong. Asuma grinned. I guess so, she said after a second, causing the man to deflate slightly. But I'm the only one. 2/3 of my team is mentally handicapped. Like you're the picture of sanity. Shikamaru drawled from his position on the nearby bench. Choji just smiled at the comment, consuming another chip from the bag in his hands. You've still never beaten either of us in a fight, he said simply, causing the blonde girl to fume. That's only because it's like trying to fight 2 bricks. Ever tried to mind switch with a brick? Asuma rolled his eyes as Ino continued to ramp up and addressed Sakura. Well, if you'd like to join us today, then how about sparring with the squad? They've only been sparring each other so far. He winced slightly as Ino dropkicked Choji off the bench. I'm sure I'll be able to teach them something, Sakura said brightly, causing the 3 to cut off from their bickering. Choji dusted himself off nonchalantly and Ino looked over with one hand still fisted in Shikamaru's shirt. It was almost impressive that his eyes were still lazily closed. Oh, think highly of yourself, billboard brow? Sakura didn't say anything, choosing to shrug instead. Well, let's go then. On your feet you too. Overlooking teammates training from a relatively nearby tree, Sasuke frowned as he considered how to approach Kurenai about training him. He didn't know what she valued, and so set about watching her and her squad in the hopes of learning something that would help. At least that was his plan at first. Why are you spying on my squad, Uchiha? For a genjutsu mistress she was rather quick on her feet. Gathering information, he answered, disrupting his chakra flow out of habit and clearing what was likely a light genjutsu that had been placed on him. Though he wasn't looking directly at her, he could tell she'd been surprised at her jutsu failing so quickly. On your fellow genin? That seems very suspicious behavior, Kurenai said. With a frown, crossing her arms as if waiting for his explanation. Sasuke glanced over at his old classmates to see them still working as they were before. To be honest, I'm not watching them, he admitted. Did you put them in a genjutsu to make them think you're still there training them? Well reasoned, she said, impressed at the deduction. You have my attention. What would one of Kakashi's kids want with me? Isn't he out on a mission? Yes, he is for a couple weeks. I'm looking for someone to help teach me genjutsu. For the first time the young woman's expression broke out of her disinterested kunoichi look, bypassing confused and going straight to incredulous. An Uchiha wants help with genjutsu, she repeated with no small amount of humor. Tell me another one. I am willing to do whatever I need to in order to get help. Kurenai's expression turned aggressive rather quickly. I've given everything I had to make it to where I am today. You want me to just hand that over? She waved his request away with a lazy hand. Wait until Kakashi get back, he can teach you and has a Sharingan too, right? Perfect. Sensei is an incredible shinobi, but you are the greatest genjutsu user in the village. It can't be anyone but you. Kurenai looked a bit taken aback at that, and Sasuke pressed the advantage. I'm willing to do anything. Anything? It was an automatic response. Anyone would have given it, no matter how interested they were. What could you possibly do for me? Quite a bit, I imagine. There was a moment of silence as they considered one another. The contemplative Kunoichi and the patient Genin. Finally, Kurenai spoke. Serve me. Excuse me? The woman smirked in amusement. Was she purposely trying to get under his skin? For the next 2 weeks, she said, now openly smiling at him. Become my personal servant. Do that and I'll teach you what I know about genjutsu. She held out her hand to him in an obvious manner. There was no way she expected anything but an outright refusal. He was a prideful Uchiha after all. Perfect. Deal. She blinked as he clasped her hand in agreement. There was a poof of smoke as a henge was performed. No longer did the Jonin face a 12-year-old genin half a foot shorter than her, but instead was now looking slightly up into a much older and taller Sasuke Uchiha's eyes. Eyes moving down, she now fully took in his appearance. He was wearing what was unmistakably a stylish butler uniform. He stepped back and bowed slightly. I am at your complete disposal, Yuhi-sama. Her mouth was slightly open in befuddlement. Training Ground 12 was as standard as they got in the village. A wide area cleared for fighting, trees for training, not destroying, and that was it. Its position close to the village wall meant that it didn't get used much compared to some of the other Genin squad designated areas, and it hadn't taken long for it to become Team 10's stomping ground. The relatively close barbecue location was purely a coincidence, of course. Might as well get right to it, said Asuma as they arrived, lighting another cigarette as he propped himself against a nearby tree. Ino, go spar your friend. Last chance to back out of this one, Sakura, the blonde warned with a grin, flicking her long hair over her shoulder. Despite her words, she was clearly up for the fight. Normally I'd say the same, but I think you need this. All of you do. Che. Sensei, call it. The Jonin took a long drag of the cigarette before saying anything. Right, just go until you can't anymore. I'll stop you when it's gone far enough. Begin. Ino rushed forward with a knowing smirk on her face. Sakura had always been a pushover in general, despite her high grades. She weaved left, then ducked low to the right with a rising strike that would have knocked the girl on her back if she hadn't leaned back at the last second. Ino's follow-up kick was similarly avoided. When did she get so slippery? Ino, I have a bit of a confession. Sakura gave her an apologetic smile. I haven't exactly been giving it my all until recently. I'm going to be a little mean. Forgive me, okay? What, don't be dash, she never got to finish her sentence, Sakura's smiling face fading from existence as something caused her to double over on the ground, the pain slamming into her mind a moment later. It was only as she collapsed that she recognized Sakura's right knee for what it was. A second later she heaved, the water she'd drunk earlier coming up easily from her stomach. You two just going to sit there? A foot hooked her middle and suddenly she was flying only to be brought to a much more gentle abrupt stop than she'd been expecting. Never before had Ino been so thankful for her teammate's solid mass. You okay? Said Choji, placing her on her feet where she stood shakily. Chakra slowly reduced the pain to a dull throb as adrenaline fueled her awareness. Sakura was where she'd started, her weight shifted to one leg as she watched patiently. The small smirk on her face did not help the blonde's mood. Fine, she gritted out, wiping her mouth with her arm. Lucky shot. Lucky? I didn't even see her move. Shikamaru was watching the pinkette with a heavy-lidded look of unwavering focus. Even Asuma-sensei is surprised. I hope you've improved from the academy, said the sole member of Team 7, one hand on her hip as she ran the other through her hair. Because if not, you'll be dead the moment you step outside of this village. The 3 members of Team 10 failed to suppress a shudder at her words. It was like she held their necks in her hands. Asuma simply watched in silence. Sakura seemed unbothered by their discomfort and just continued. It's funny, you've always thought yourself higher on the ladder than me, but the reality of it is that you don't even know what the ladder looks like. Compared to me. She pointed to the 3 of them with a smirk before dropping the finger straight down. You're all the dirt on the ground. Come and get stepped on, XXX Ino. What the hell is going on? I don't know. Sakura shouldn't be this strong, I used to beat her up all the time. How's Choji? I'm okay. I think, came a low groan from between them. 1 minute he'd been on his feet, the next Sakura was in his guard, laying him out with a brutal combo that put him in the dirt. Did that really happen? Now you know how I feel after she kneed me in the gut, Ino spat, trying her best to help Choji to his feet while still keeping an eye on their surroundings. Sakura had been flitting around them like an apparition, striking instantly and without mercy. Her strength was confusing, her skill uncanny. Had she really been hiding this from them all this time? She fooled all of us, Shikamaru said finally, hastily pushing Ino aside as he deflected 2 shuriken aimed for her side with a kunai. His shadow stretched out swiftly, but Sakura was long gone again. But that doesn't matter right now. We have to work together to stop her. Right. How long are you planning on keeping them like that? Sakura looked over at the sole member of Team 10 that hadn't been affected by her genjutsu. The genin were running around and putting on a spectacular coordinated display of shadow boxing. I've been practicing a lot, but I guess it makes sense you wouldn't have been caught, she reasoned. He was a jonin after all. One of my friends is one of the best genjutsu specialists in the village, he gave as his explanation. Sakura suppressed a smirk at that. Friends. Right. I see, she said. Well, I knocked them around a bit, so I'll let them rest and we can see if they break it. It shouldn't take too long. Asuma just shook his head at her nonchalant attitude. Yikes, Kakashi wasn't kidding. You sure you're a new genin? Not some midget ANBU plant? You're too generous, Sakura said, only needing to half-fake the embarrassment that rose to her face. Sure, she wasn't exactly a 12-year-old girl, but genuine praise was rare when it concerned her, particularly when she was a genin. And your teammates are just as good? They are really good, Sakura said with a nod, internally agreeing that they were far more skilled than she remembered. But I'm the strongest. Sure about that, huh? Yep, she said with a smile. Oh, if only he knew. Well, if you've ever got free time to burn, you can always train with us. Seeing one of their peers making growth will keep them motivated. Even lazy kids like them. Kai. The discordant sounds of 3 voices breaking Sakura's genjutsu brought a smile to her face, though not quite as much as the face Ino was making, scrunched in concentration. I'm so done, I can't believe that nightmare was a genjutsu, Shikamaru groaned. He slumped as he began to drag himself to the nearest patch of grass. At least you didn't puke, Ino spat. You're pretty. Incredible, Choji directed to the pink-clad genin. He also looked tapped out. I'd bet you're even stronger than Sasuke. Shoo, don't tell him, it'll hurt his feelings, she said with a smile, wagging her hand at him. You okay there, Ino-chan? TCH, how did you get this strong? It's bullshit. She gave one look at her retreating teammates before throwing her hands up in frustration. You don't even have a clan. Sakura frowned at that but let it go. Maybe that secret clan training isn't all it's cracked up to be after all. Hey, don't insult my clan. You're right, I'm sorry, I should be insulting you, who's wasting the amazing amount of resources that you earned by being born. Good job, Ino, your most entitled clan princess award is waiting for you back home. Yes, I suppose that's one interpretation of let it go. I'm not dash. Ino cut off at the look her old friend was giving her. You could be so much better. Sakura said, frustration seeping through her voice. She knew it, better than anyone, how much better they all could be. She knew that she could prod and guide them in the right direction, making them stronger and safer sooner. War was a long time away, but still ultimately inevitable. So she'd generously help her fellow genin. And when are you training your ass off? She shot. I never saw you doing anything other than reading. I'm a ninja, Ino. You only see what I want you to see. Always. And she smiled. Yes, it would be fun to train with them for a bit. Hopefully they wouldn't come away from it emotionally scarred. Even now, sometime later, XXX, so kid, where you from? Further in that way. The boy pointed back to the shore the boat had launched from, now lost in a sea of thick fog. I've been traveling a lot, though. At your age? Mighty bold of ya. The man who captained their small boat nodded at what he'd just said, leaning into the long pole he used to smoothly propel them across the water's surface. The world is too big not to go see what's out there, the boy said cheerfully. Whoa! His exclamation was caused by the sudden appearance of the underside of a great stone bridge that stretched to the distance. Its immense size had been hidden by the heavy fog that settled over the area. I've never seen a bridge so big. Bad business around that bridge, kid. Best steer clear of it while you're around. Just keep your head down in general, actually. Nami hasn't been the safest. What do you mean? Have there been bandits? Well. The boat continued through the fog, muffled voices fading as their conversation was lost in the thick white air. Kurenai moaned slightly as she shifted in her bed. Sunlight streamed in her window, making her wince as she cracked a solitary eye at the new day. Immediately she rolled over, burying her head further in her comfortable blankets and pillows. She could take just a few more minutes before needing to meet her team. A gentle beep from her side table clock signaled the top of the hour. I really should get up. Ugh, why do I care so much about getting ready? I could be getting so much more sleep if I just hinged it. Asuma probably wouldn't even notice when we go out, he's too busy picturing me naked. Despite her desire to continue her blissful rest, she pushed herself up, absently moving her hair out of her face. And nearly had a heart attack as she noticed the butler with his head bowed standing by the door. Good morning, Yuhi-sama, he said evenly, the only change in his posture being his now outstretched hands that held the 3 shuriken and 2 kunai that had been thrown at him in panic. Do you require any assistance getting ready this morning, or would you be preferring a fast breakfast? Breakfast? As you wish, he said with a bow, eyes still lowered to the floor. If you need anything, don't hesitate to call. And he vanished, though not before placing the weapons on a nearby side table. Mind still somewhat shorted out, she pushed herself out of bed and opened her door enough to peek her head through. A small apartment cleaner than any she'd ever lived in lay before her. It seemed to glimmer in the morning light. It had been distinctly more disorganized and messy the night before. For many minutes she simply stared, trying to process the shift in image. Was this really her home? A light breeze from the open window far across from the bedroom door pushed past her into the room, bringing her rapidly sharpening focus to the fact she wasn't wearing underwear. In fact, all she had on was a too large shirt that barely cleared her hips. The intermittent sounds of food preparation floated through the air, and before long the wonderful smell of something gently embraced her senses. She'd never been the most adept cook, going so far as to put a featherlight genjutsu on anyone who was forced to eat her cooking so they'd think it was amazing. Shameless, yeah, as well as something she could use to hide the taste of strong poisons, but it wasn't like it hurt them after all. This aroma though. Had her home ever actually experienced something so heavenly? Wadash. Suddenly she realized she was standing in the kitchen. When had she moved? Yuhi-sama, my apologies, I did not expect to see you here so soon. There he was again, this time with an apron on over the butler uniform. He was also looking at her directly now. Simultaneously her hands twitched for both the hem of her shirt and one of the knives held to the kitchen wall by magnet, but she forced herself not to grab either. She was a kunoichi kami, damn it. She had control. Still. You are him, right? She asked hesitantly. I am merely your servant, Yuhi-sama, the butler said, bowing his head for a moment in respect. His eyes remained locked on her own. They'd not even once twitched a hair lower. Right. Was there something you needed? The butler continued politely. No, I've got it. I just need the bathroom. Of course. Breakfast should be ready in 10 minutes. And he returned to his cooking. Slowly Kurenai walked to her bathroom and closed the door, taking a seat on the toilet as she stared at the opposite wall. This is insanity. I'll just tell him the deal's off. As soon as I'm dressed I'll do it. The wonderful smell made its way under the door and tickled her nose. After breakfast. Then for sure. Meanwhile, far to the east on a small island off the coast. Man, I forgot how depressing this place used to be, Naruto mused to himself as he walked through the main streets of Nami. The market was as bad as he'd ever seen for a place that actually had people living there. There was an invisible weight that had settled over the region, dimming the colors and dulling the sounds of what should be a thriving harbor village. Even with the economical damage that likely came with the strife across the land of water, Nami's still the closest island village to the mainland by an extremely wide margin. Old Man Tazuna's bridge was the icing on an already enormous trade route cake. It seemed impossible for things to devolve this much, and yet they had. Kami, even the ramen here sucked. What is the water daimyo even doing? The blonde said absently, kicking a loose stone lightly. Not giving a damn about this shithole. The uncaring voice came from a teenage boy who sat on the top of a small stack of wooden crates. Another two teens, a boy and girl respectively, sat a level down, giving the impression of being the first's underlings. The rough look of all three and occasional streak of dirt painted the picture all the better. You three work for Gato? The name grabbed their attention immediately. Passerbyers who'd heard it sped up, determined to get away from what was sure to be trouble. No, we're not good enough, the girl said automatically. Bullshit, we could take half of those assholes one-on-one, the second boy grunted. I'd make a way better guard than Koshiro. Right, if that were true you'd be hired instead of him, the first said dismissively, turning back to the traveler. The conversation sounded like one that had been aired frequently. What's it to you? Just wondering I guess, Naruto said honestly, resting his hands behind his head. Kinda broke, could use a job. You hungry? Fuck off brat. Go back to whatever village you came from, the second spat. The girl seemed to have already checked out, staring back up at the clouds. Fine, fine. Naruto walked off, subtly adjusting his henge every few minutes so that it would be impossible for anyone to accurately point him out. He didn't think that extra anonymous was really a thing, but if ever there was a time for it to exist it would be now. Getting discovered was the ultimate game over. He'd even left his regular orange outfit back at home, Hitai and all, on the off chance his henge was disrupted. Like this he walked around for another 10 minutes or so before nodding to himself and walking into a deserted alleyway before vanishing in a small puff of smoke. Not before losing his curious Gato-employed stalker, of course. Miles away, Naruto opened his eyes as memories of one of his clones returned, the one that had headed to the market. Dozens more moved about the island in stealth, keeping out of anyone's notice, ready to pop if something needed reporting. It wouldn't make do for anyone in Nami to notice a sudden surge in travelers. Even just one newcomer brought more than a little attention. Unbidden, his eyes closed once more, feeling uncharacteristically tired. He was stretched incredibly thin at the moment. Well, that was what he got for leaving an untold number of clones on the mainland to practice with his Bija chakra. Doing so in the village was almost always too risky, and he wasn't ready to answer those questions quite yet. That said, he needed to get more in sync with Kurama, and would take the chances he could get. It was the only way he could realistically hang with the truly scary monsters out there at the moment. He was, in a moment of reflection, laying on the grass in the middle of the forest with wild medicinal plants. Haku had been, arguably, his first friend, as short as the peaceful interaction between them had been. Even with Haku already knowing who he was, there had been no real deceit between them. Naruto knew in his heart that if they had met under different circumstances, that they would surely be friends. But this time, it seemed impossible. How could he convince Zabuza to abandon working for Gato without making an enemy of him? Killing Gato was ultimately the wrong choice. Nami had bigger problems than being under the thumb of a money-grubbing business owner. The people kept themselves down more effortlessly than anything. Old man Tazuna was realistically the only one fighting back in the only way he knew how. Building something. Then there was the issue with Zabuza himself. Future knowledge told him that the missing Nin worked to overthrow the current Mizukage, Yagura, the Jinchuriki of Isabu, the three-tailed beast. Zabuza worked for Gato simply because he paid extremely well. Killing Gato wouldn't just stop Zabuza from being paid, but prevent him from getting any future jobs as well. It was really only because of Team 7's interference that Gato tried to cut his losses. Zabuza wouldn't want to leave his job. And Naruto had absolutely nothing to offer Zabuza. He was a broke genin after all. Well, there was one thing. Which is why he decided to be so deliberate about where he did his reflecting. You'll catch your death, sleeping on the ground like that. He opened his eyes to a nostalgic scene. A boy in a sleeveless pink kimono with dark swirls on it was kneeling at his side, looking down with a neutral expression. Damn, I'd almost forgotten how pretty he is. I was waiting, Naruto said, hands still behind his head in a relaxed manner. How far was he willing to go to save a friend he never had? For a village that no longer recognized him? Out here? Haku raised his eyebrows a hair in curiosity. For what? You, actually. I want to talk to Zabuza. And what? The feather-like touch of a senbon needle under his jaw almost made him smile. Would you want with him? This time he did smile, showing teeth. How far was he willing to go? He'd end the world if he had to. I've got a good deal for him. Will you take me, Haku Yuki-chan? Zabuza Momochi was a naturally aggressive person. Any shinobi brought up in the bloody mist was bound to have some issues. Even he'd agree with someone on that, and then kill them, but that's besides the point. It stood to reason that his patience was also something he was not known for. However, sometimes even he, the demon of the hidden mist, had to pause and wonder what the fuck was going on without automatically beheading everyone in the immediate vicinity. Haku, why is there a brat in front of me? Indeed there was. A kid probably a few years younger than Haku with the most bland features imaginable on a human. It was like he was scientifically built to be forgettable. He wanted to speak to you, Zabuza-sama, Haku said without preamble, head bowed respectfully. Zabuza resisted both the urge to palm his face and cause immediate bodily harm. So you said, sure, follow me, and just led him here? No, I questioned him further before leading him. Right. The brat was currently rolling his eyes, making air quotes as he mouthed the word questioned. Honestly, if Haku weren't as useful as he was, he might have honestly considered chopping them both in half just for the headache he was getting. And the reason you look like that? Because Haku looked as disheveled as he had the day he found him, and the damn kid had been homeless then. My questioning did not prove fruitful, he returned stoically. You tried to stab me, Haku-chan, the brat complained with a pout. Please do not call me that. Had Haku ever sounded so harassed before? Just who was this kid? Fine, I'll hear you out, Zabuza said finally, taking a seat on a rock. They were currently located at one of the half-dozen safe zones they'd set up around the island in case anything went south, unlikely though it was. Standard procedure really, when you were an infamous missing nin. The brat's life was already written off at this point, but at the very least he'd piqued the Jonin's interest. Don't waste my time. I'll kill you otherwise. Please, waste my time. Sorry, I honestly couldn't think of a better way to get to you than through him, the brat said, sitting on the ground without issue. Don't be mad at him though, Haku really went all out to try and get me to talk. A moment was all it took for Zabuza to meet Haku's eyes for confirmation, suppressing the surprise that came with it when it did. So the brat was actually quite strong if he could take down someone that he'd been training for years. Get to the point. Nice to see some things don't change, the brat said to himself. I'm going to break my henge, so don't go all demon of the mist on me, okay? A hand sign and poof of smoke later and the unassuming brat was replaced with a lightly geared man who looked to be in his late teens or early 20s. He'd surely gained some mass, though still sitting as he was. The change wasn't that apparent. What was immediately obvious was the wild, shoulder-length red hair. Hair that automatically had him on his feet, one hand on his blade. There wasn't a single person in Kiri that wouldn't recognize what was sitting in front of him. Uzumaki? In the flesh, the man said, seemingly unconcerned that his life was very much in danger. You want to hear me out now? Zabuza slowly let go of his blade, forcing himself to take his seat once again as his mind moved rapidly. An Uzumaki? Sure, there were no doubt survivors from Yuzu being wiped out, but independent? Shinobi trained? This was a village of people that took the combined might of 3 shinobi nations to crush. His instincts screamed that he was no longer the big fish in the proverbial pond here, but his nature demanded that be challenged. Both were unhelpful though, and so he pushed them aside equally. More importantly, he believed he wasn't being lied to, and the only way to confirm that the man actually was what he said was to watch and wait. What do you want? Zabuza finally said. I want you to stop targeting the bridge builder and his family. It took a second for the words to fully register. Something like that was just so. A job's a job, he said shortly. I don't back out once I've been given one. Even if it'll get you what you've been looking for all this time. And what would that be? Kiri. Silence struck the space. Kiri? What did he mean by that? I'll make you a deal. Uzumaki stood, and for the first time it felt like there was nothing but steel in his voice. 2 weeks. Don't attack the bridge builder or his family for 2 weeks. Have Haku keep them safe, he can do it. Make whatever excuses to Gato that you need. Do this and I will kill Yagura. Incredulity was not something typically seen on the missing nin's face. You're offering to kill the Mizukage for the lives of a bunch of peasants? This place isn't amazing, Uzumaki agreed. But I simply can't let it fall to the greed of a person like Gato. You some kind of bleeding heart? Zabuza scoffed. Save a place from one issue and watch another take its place. The Uzumaki shook his head. I can't save this place, he said with a frown. They need to do it themselves. But at the very least with this I can give them a fighting chance. To be honest. Uzumaki scratched his chin for a moment before continuing. There are 2 people I'm trying to save. My first friend, kind of, and someone he cares about. They don't know I'm doing it, but I just want them to live well. You are doing this for someone precious to you? It was the first time since their arrival that Haku said anything, finally having returned to his usual immaculate look. Two someones, but yeah. Uzumaki gave him a bright smile. That's the only way I know how to operate. You look like you understand what I mean, yeah? Zabuza held back a tired breath as the ice user gave the Uzumaki a small smile. Well. He won Haku over easily enough. He wanted to reject the offer out of hand. There was obviously more going on than there seemed. However, he considered the fact that the bridge builder had actually recently left Nami, no doubt to appeal to Konoha for aid, right under the noses of the now more trouble than they were worth idiot Chunin brothers. It might take the old man over a week just to get a team and begin the trip back. Realistically, he might only be putting off completing this job by a couple days, still well within the time frame he was operating under. Gato already knew about the situation and was patient enough to wait. He was in for the long game after all. Also, he could just use her to determine if the Uzumaki was the real deal. She would probably kill him for it, but if she found out he'd been approached and didn't act on it, she'd probably kill him worse. How do you plan on getting to Kirigakure? He asked finally. Asking you nicely for help? This time he actually did facepalm. You don't talk much, do ya? Naruto stretched his back with a small grunt, digging his knuckle at a knot that was beginning to form. The boat he was on was fairly small compared to the trade ships that he'd seen in Nami's main harbor, but it was still spacious enough to allow him a comfortable space of the deck to watch the clouds from. When he could, that was. It hadn't taken longer than a day for them to become constantly enveloped by mist. The sounds of the sea around him had long since become a subtle symphony of lows and highs, matched perfectly by the swells of the waves. His only companion sat at the back of their vessel, leaning against their small pile of supplies as he inspected a kunai for wear. He was using a water jutsu to keep the boat moving forward at a rapid and quiet pace. His response was similarly calm. You talk too much. Let it never be said that Zabuza Momochi was a conversationalist. Seriously, don't say it. You haven't said for me to stop, Naruto said with a shrug, turning back to face the Jonin. I figured you'd say something when we got close to Kiri. We aren't going straight there, Zabuza said shortly, spinning the kunai once before stowing it. You didn't ask, he added, predicting the Uzumaki's response. Okay, so where are you taking me? It wasn't like he was particularly worried, just curious. Silence was his only answer. Of course it's a secret. He shrugged and closed his eyes. Nothing for it but to wait until they got wherever they were going. Little else to do. But let his mind wander. I wonder what the others are up to. Kurenai tensed uncontrollably. Her focus, razor-sharp and unwavering, was entirely devoted to maintaining herself through her most recent predicament. Will of fire, will of fire, will of fire, will of, on, the sounds of the apartment became unnaturally loud to her ears. The soft sounds of someone moving behind her out of sight, the rustle of the sheet caught beneath her stomach, the cataclysmically embarrassing wail that surely the entire universe heard despite only existing in her head. She'd returned from training her team in high spirits, but distinctly sore. Kiba had been practicing tandem techniques with his Ninken Akameru and lost control of a particularly devastating one, nearly injuring his teammate Shino who had been nearby. She'd been able to step in and remove the bug user from the area of destruction, but at the cost of being battered by debris from Kiba's impact. An apology from the Inazaka and a threat from her about making him hear cats yowling for the next month ended the incident. Didn't lessen the dull throb that had then permeated her body though. Getting battered by chunks of tree, dirt and rock was not pleasant. Still, she was overjoyed with the amount of damage her so-called tracker team could put out. Kiba was probably the most destructive of the group, but Shino had incredible utility with his insects, and Hinata, for all her shyness, was easily a dangerous opponent for anyone to face. Neither of her teammates could come close to taking her down, alone or together. They'd called an end to training with smiles on their faces at their growth. She'd gone right home from training her team. Asuma was still with his team. They'd apparently picked it up considerably with the addition of one of Kakashi's kids while he was on a mission. Besides, she was sore and could use. Yuhi-sama, I've drawn a bath for you with minerals meant to help soothe bruising. Please relax, I will bring you some tea. That was how the evening started. It got progressively worse from there. Now she was getting a massage and was simultaneously delighted and filled with regret over the decision to allow it. Servant. If the butler took notice of her shaky voice, he made no outward sign of it. Yes, Yuhi-sama, he said politely, pausing in his ministrations on her calf. Not so hard, Kurenai said unnecessarily, shooting him a glance over her shoulder. It was an unnecessary comment because the pressure he'd been applying was perfect. Every moment had been perfect. She quickly averted her gaze back to the pillow she'd been burying her head in for the duration of the massage. He was smiling at her, as always. My apologies, Yuhi-sama. Impossibly, the perfect massage changed into a more gentle yet still perfect massage. Only her own exhaustion prevented her from sighing in bliss again. This has to stop. So good. No. After this I'll tell him it's over. I swear it. Will of fire, will of fire, will of. Behind her, the butler's smile widened marginally. Whatever he may be thinking was purely a mystery. I don't see why we couldn't handle one. You've all been putting in some real work lately. Asuma couldn't help but grin back at the 4 genin that trailed him on the way to the mission assignment desk. The 3 actual genin from his squad threw him unappreciative looks while the 4th, completely unassuming badass genin, beamed back at him with cheer. Isn't that great, Ino, we get to go on a C rank, she said, throwing an arm around her friend's shoulders. The blonde just shook her head in annoyance. Most teams would be thrilled for their sensei to be doing this. Most teams got stuck doing D ranks for months. Most teams weren't Team 10. Easy for you to be so happy when you haven't had the crap beat out of you by a manic pinkette for the last 3 days straight. And what do you mean we, she added. Go back to your own squad, Sakura. You know we're not getting back together for another 10 days or so, Ino-chan, don't you love me? To be honest, I wish she could be here all the time, Shikamaru said to Choji, ignoring the light harassment their teammate was experiencing. It's a drag that there's more work to do, but having someone to distract Ino is priceless. What was that, pineapple head? Easy there, kids, Asuma laughed, clapping to get their attention. We're here, let's get a C rank. Moments later. I can't give you a C rank. The Jonin blinked at the Chunin seated in front of him. Run that by me again, he said, genuinely confused. He'd honestly never heard the statement before while standing at this desk. I said I can't give you a C rank, the Chunin repeated patiently. I know your genin are talented, I taught them after all. That said, the fact of the matter is that they have neither completed the base number of D ranks needed to take a C rank, nor have they demonstrated themselves enough to warrant allowing them out of the village, regardless of your own capabilities. You do know who I am. Right? Of course. Asuma Sarutobi. Would you like to take a D rank now? Asuma was still blinking in confusion at the Chunin. It wasn't that he always got what he wanted, but let's be fair here, he was the Hokage's son. He always got what he wanted, whether he wanted it or not. And now this, notably polite, Chunin was telling him no? The Jonin turned to where his father was sitting, further down the table, reviewing mission scrolls like he usually did in the morning. Their eyes met for a moment and the Hokage smiled before returning to his work, effectively ignoring him. Yeah, screw you too, old man. And then he got a brilliant idea. "Look, what if I brought along some extra firepower," he said, motioning for Sakura to join him at the table. She did so with a look of curiosity on her face. "Did you need me for something?" "Good morning, Irika-sensei," she added, with a smile. "Good morning, Sakura," Irika returned automatically. "You want to bring along another genin? You know she's also from the class your squad was in, right?" "Oh, I'd love to join them on a mission," she said brightly. "Honestly, she's overkill for backup," Asuma reasoned absently, "but if she came along then there wouldn't be an issue, right?" "I'll allow it." The three of them looked over at where the Hokage had stood up, finished with what he'd been doing. "Sir?" Irika said in surprise. "Sakura is currently on leave because I sent Kakashi on a mission, so there's no trouble," the elder man explained, walking over to them. "She also has a stellar record so far." "That she does," the Chunin mused, sending the girl another fond smile. "Ah, one of his favorite students," Asuma reasoned. "All right then," Irika moved a handful of scrolls in front of him. It only took another few minutes of perusing before he decided. Only one had any real traveling to it, and that was always a great learning experience for new squads. It wasn't long before their objective was summoned. A grouchy, half-intoxicated old man who did nothing but talk down to the kids that would be forced to protect him. It almost brought a tear to the Jonin's eye. He couldn't have asked for a better mission if he tried. Honestly, the only thing that was even more amusing was the fact that Sakura was absolutely delighted by the turn of events. There was something about Mai Terumi that never sat well with Naruto. As he stood there in front of the woman, her two future advisors Ao and the much younger Chojuro off to the side while Zabuza did his best to not look like he'd rather be anywhere else, Naruto found himself running through all of the previous interactions he'd had with the now future Mizukage. They met during the Fourth War, and only saw more of each other in the years after its conclusion once Tsunade began seriously grooming him for taking up the position of Hokage. Mai was intelligent and charismatic, frighteningly strong in her jutsu, distractingly beautiful, and dedicated to her village and people. She brought out the best in those who supported her, and he honestly had no issue working with her to bring an end to Kiri's civil war. It was just. I just can't put my finger on it. What on earth was it about her that, okay, so offering to kill the Mizukage for me aside. Are you single? Nope. Double nope. That's it. That's the reason right there. Because her offering to help him restore his clan had sounded less and less like a joke the more she said it to him when he was there for those Kage meetings. Damn, he thought he'd suppressed those memories. I am currently unable to seek a relationship at this time. Please accept my apologies, he said robotically, bowing his head to the question as he systematically deleted the last 10 seconds from his brain as best he could. Oh, that's too bad, the woman mused with a sigh. Do keep me in mind. If you somehow survive this suicide run you're volunteering for, I should be fine. Then I'll look forward to your success. How do you plan on killing Yagura? What will you even do about the beast he holds? Naruto silently thanked all the gods he knew of for the disruption, turning to the eldest in the room, the one-eyed Ao. Abrasive and wary, Ao balanced out Mei's smoothness with some good old-fashioned grumpiness. He was also the person who was undoubtedly the largest threat to his disguise. There was no fooling a Byakugan after all, hidden or not. Still, as far as he could tell, the eye would only recognize his henge for what it was, as opposed to his original form, and he didn't think they were going to do anything about it considering what he was offering them. Many shinobi operated under some form of disguise on principle, and this was no different. Let me worry about that. You focus on fixing the bigger mess. And it truly was a mess. A mess that caused innocent people like Haku to lose everything to what could only be called insanity. Even his own clan, the once great Uzumaki, were brought to nothing before the controlling power of widespread fear. Visiting Yuzu after the Fourth Shinobi War had done nothing but fill him with a deep sense of loss and regret. Ao just grunted skeptically. And you would do this for nothing? My goals are my goals, as little as they may seem to anyone else, Naruto said with a shrug. There was also the benefit that putting Mei in charge a little earlier would also surely jumpstart Kiri's return to the international scene. Ao looked like he wanted to continue to grill him, but Mei just silenced him with a wave of her hand. No time to hesitate then. We have been ready for some time. Zabuza. He grunted in return. Take the Uzumaki to the village. Confirm the kill. Either one, she added with a smirk. The man nodded jerkily and walked out of the room with the redhead. Chojuro, ready our forces. We might not get an opportunity like this for some time. Hi. He vanished at once. What did you see, Ao? He is hinged. His Byakugan had been active for the duration of the entire meeting. Even now he tracked the Uzumaki as Zabuza led him to the boats. It's not like Zabuza to be wrong about something like this. So he's not an actual Uzumaki? I'd sooner believe he is, the older man admitted. More than likely he was just hiding his real face and age from us. He has more chakra potential than all of us. Well, that's not especially combined. He makes Kisame look like a child. That man is a monster. No doubt a survivor from Yuzu. Mei's expression darkened at Ao's words. Do you believe we have anything to fear? In retaliation? Ao frowned as he considered the possibility. There is no point thinking about it now. His motivation for helping us seems strong enough. It would be foolish to trust him though, even a single Uzumaki is a deadly foe for a nation. The world is better off without them. Silence once again filled the room. Neither moved for some time, both sorting through their thoughts. Eventually Ao let out a gravely breath of exasperation. You really need to stop thinking with your ovaries. Mei closed her eyes, face slowly scrunching up as a vein pulsed dangerously on her forehead. Ao, step in front of me so I can fucking kill you. Sakura was thoroughly enjoying herself. Escorting Tazuna back to Nami was every bit as fun as it had been the first time around, but it was a breath of fresh air to be somewhat on the outside of the situation. The old man's disrespectful attitude may have driven her up a tree or two before, but now her mind wandered freely, approaching the mission as she should have always done. She skipped lightly over a puddle in the road with a carefree smile, looking back over her shoulder to catch Asuma's eye, a fleeting glance at the little spot of blue sky being reflected on the ground. You are way too relaxed, Ino grumbled, choosing to walk around the puddle without so much as a look. What happened to the super killer kunoichi vibe you had going? Hard to do when the weather is so nice. Come on, Ino, don't you love traveling? Sakura responded, turning to walk backwards. The village gets boring after a while. Sure, camping is fuyuin, she drawled, running her fingers through her hair. She swore she could already feel the dust from the road building up in it. Don't give me that bull about being shinobi either, I can do that and still like showers. I don't care where we go if it stays like this, Shikamaru said tiredly, eyes lingering on the puddle for far longer than was typical. I hope we get there soon though, I'm almost out of snacks, Choji commented, rummaging through his pouch with a frown. This is ridiculous. Tazuna grouched. He'd gotten extra grumpy once his alcohol ran out, and it wasn't like they could stop off somewhere for more. I'm dead. There's no way I'm making it back home in one piece. Tazuna-san, you make it sound like you'll be attacked at any moment, Sakura tittered, throwing him a wide-eyed look. Pa, I'm the greatest bridge builder this side of the mainland, he boasted. Of course people want a piece of me. Keeping me safe is the most important mission you'll ever have. Yeah, right. Ino muttered. A second later, two Chunin jumped out of the puddle and tore Asuma to shreds, immediately making a move on their true target. Was so nostalgic. Sakura felt adrenaline flood her body, she tensed her arms, then hid a smile as she threw back her head and screamed in fear for old time's sake. I'm surprised. About what? Naruto stood in silence on an outcropping of rocky mountain terrain that overlooked the village hidden in the mist. Like its name suggested, much of the visible buildings were woven amongst great bands of mist that obscured more of the finer details of the village. Still, the cylindrical building architecture was none too subtle, and it was only more obvious what the largest of these would be, even if Zabuza hadn't already told him where to go. It spoke to the level of desperation Mei and her group were experiencing to put even a hair of faith in an unknown like him. That you are going through with this. Naruto closed his eyes, a moment later finding himself face to face with Kurama, his massive frame draped across the new grassy clearing of the seal space. Their faces were fairly close for a change. It solves more problems than it makes, the blonde said shortly. You pretend like I cannot feel your heart. The thought of assassinating this man sickens you. Naruto's shoulders fell slightly. Yeah. It's sad, Kurama. The Jinchuriki will always feel like family to me, no matter what they've done. Naruto's eyes opened once more, taking in the village again before he began to make his way to the Mizukage's office. This is madness. Kurama's voice reverberated through his thoughts with a sudden, impossible weight to it. Believe whatever you want about our connection or your skills, if he unleashes Isabu you will die. I won't. You are a child, in every sense of the word. A fool chasing a dream, given a second chance only to piss it away at the first opportunity. It's okay to be afraid. Afraid? You believe that I know you can't reform properly if I'm killed. Not while my dad has your young half. Kurama's voice fell silent, but Naruto smiled. Don't worry, I won't let you go. Zabuza scowled as he took his position on the building nearest to the Mizukage's tower. The village Anbu were being suppressed by their own sizable force and the Uzumaki had successfully made his way into the tower. Despite the seemingly quiet day, the coup had already begun in the shadows. It was only a matter of moments before the fighting would truly be underway, but he had to resist to assist his comrades. His job was to track the most critical fight of them all, which meant he had to be patient and passive. Kami, he hated that word. At least he didn't need to get too close to witness what was sure to be an outrageous combat between two. Suddenly the glass on the top floor of the tower exploded outward in a burst of force and smoke. A number of Kiri Shinobi soon emerged, spreading out in every direction as they moved with clear urgency. Well, that was odd. Shouldn't they be going in to help their leader? Without hesitation Zabuza moved, stealthing his way to the tower and moving up the side until he was now standing in a room he hadn't been in for some time. The Mizukage's open office was sparsely decorated and completely empty. The Mizukage and Uzumaki were gone. There were no signs of a fight. No trace remained of either. They'd simply vanished. In a puff of smoke. Zabuza's hand found his forehead easily as the urge to maim a small animal rose. Shit. Mei's going to kill me. A light scuffling. Footsteps rapidly giving way to gentle splashes. A heavy breath joining the rough sea wind. Naruto frowned at the fairly short man standing out on the water. They watched each other impassively. A reverse summoning. You weren't lying, it seems, Yagura said shortly, spinning his oddly shaped metal staff. The hook at one end softly grazed the water, bringing a slow unnatural stillness to the bay as the reflection of the world within seemed to sharpen tenfold. Tall mountains rose opposite the ocean, isolating the area. The shore was a mix of rocky crags and soft beaches. One small stretch of flat stone had a peculiar set of markings on it, flickers of blue dissipating into the air as the chakra it had contained was dispersed from use. Killing your people is the last thing I want, Naruto said honestly. I know you don't want that either. Because no matter how many had suffered under his rule, Yugura still was a Kage with a job to do. He at least respected that, if nothing else. Why are you targeting me then? Yugura asked, curious. Allowing yourself to be used by insurrectionists. Is it revenge for Yozu? Just trying to save some people I care about, Naturo returned, stepping out onto the water. A kunai was spun lazily in his right hand while his left fingered a tightly wound scroll at his waist. I see. The water burst up around Naruto in waves, arching out and back in great twisting spikes that sought to spear him. Through it all the Uzumaki was barely able to make out Yugura continuing through hand signs for what was surely another attack. Futon, Repusho. The wind pressure that built up at his hands ballooned outwards as he whipped them sideways, pushing the incoming water away with little resistance. He leapt upwards a moment later as jaws of water snapped its maw shut where he'd just been. Futon, Yuha Sho. Moving his arms across his body, twin blades of wind raced to the Kage, neatly parting the water where he dodged away from for a second before it crashed back together. Naruto used the opportunity to land safely, launching forward to engage Yugura as closely as he could. Suetun, Ikari no Yuzu. The Mizukage dragged his staff through the water at his feet, generating a whirlpool that expanded immensely in seconds. Naruto simply rushed into it, using the momentum of the water to propel himself to his opponent. Within seconds they met in a clash of steel, furiously exchanging blows as the water dragged them both ever closer to the center of the bay. Yugura's staff was a whirl of movement, easily keeping him out of the lethal wind user's hands. Naruto couldn't help but be impressed as he found himself needing to frequently switch to the defensive. He was sure that just in staff arts alone the Mizukage could give the old man Hokage a run for his money. Yugura was clearly confident. He was a battle-tested Kage. A highly successful shinobi. He was a water user fighting on a limitless supply of water. He even had the weapon with the better reach. But he had a weakness. Every Jinchuriki did. The same weakness, regardless of age or skill. All Jinchuriki believed that their tailed beast would bail them out when they really needed it. It wasn't blind trust either. Due to the nature of the ways that Jinchuriki were made, the tailed beast would always want their host to live on, even if just for their own benefit. After all, if dispersing and reforming years later was so simple a process of becoming free, why didn't the tailed beasts allow their hosts to die all the time? Regardless, Yugura believed that Isabu would be there if anything went wrong. And so he would not fight to his fullest out of habit. A habit that came from always holding a greater power in reserve. Naruto would know. He was just as guilty of it all as well. It just didn't help Yugura because even at the tender age of 12, the Naruto that existed now was in a class of his own for one simple reason. Leagues away, two meditating clones dispersed with a smile. Yugura choked as a swipe he'd comfortably dodged left streams of blood in its wake. His staff split neatly in half and dropped from limp fingers as his body hit the surging water with a dull splash, dragged to the center of the whirlpool. Naruto stood with his hand still extended, nearly invisible claws of wind distorting the air in front of his fingers. His eyes were cold, no longer their bright blue but a rough gold with solid bars of black for pupils. The skin at the edges of his eyes was a bright orange. Sage mode is still absolutely bullshit, he said with a frown. A second later there was an explosion of water as a human-sized mass of blackish red burst from the depths. I should have expected an Uzumaki to have a trick up their sleeve, though to be fair I was expecting something more of your lineage, Yugura said slowly, the chakra cloak bubbling around him. Naruto could see the wound he'd created no longer bleeding freely as it should. It wasn't healing, but it wouldn't hinder him for the time being. I'm beginning to question your origins, Uzumaki. Believe what you want, Naruto said evenly. Next time you won't get back up. You should have gone for my head. You'll never get the chance again, Yugura said with a sneer, leaning forward onto all fours as the chakra cloak burst outward then back in, thickening as he immediately transformed into his hybrid bijou state. Now he looked more like a turtle than anything. A few seconds later Naruto was picking himself up after getting sent flying halfway across the bay. So you can finally throw a punch. Bring it. Tsunami. I'm back. Father. Welcome home. Team 10 groaned as one in relief and dropped in a collective heap on the ground as the bridge builder hugged his daughter in front of their home. Inari, get out here, your grandfather is back. Tsunami called back into the house over her shoulder. She then took in the collapsed genin. Are they okay? Who cares? They're brats, said Tazuna, ignoring them as he walked past them and into the house. Is that how you talk to someone who saved your life? If I could move right now, old man. Ino, don't threaten the client, Asuma chided, unconcerned with the disheveled state of his team. Instead he stepped up to the young woman, bowing his head slightly. Ma'am, we're from Konoha. Your father hired us for protection. Of course, we'll gladly include you and your son in that. Oh, yes, thank you. It's wonderful to see him back here safely, she said, eyes wide as she took in the jonin. He smiled and her cheeks gained a slightly pinkish hue. What? She looked around for something to say before her eyes landed once more on the group of genin. What happened to them? Since the trip here from the village was mostly peaceful, I had them training while we walked, Asuma explained. They're alright, just wiped out. Huh, what a bunch of losers. All eyes turned to a kid no older than 7 or 8 wearing a blue and white striped hat. He was watching the genin from the front door with contempt. Inari. Tsunami said sharply, making the boy flinch. What, they are, he said defiantly, only to wince as an open hand softly pressed against the top of his head. Now, Inari, that is no way to speak to guests. We shouldn't judge those we know nothing of. Another person, this time a teenaged girl in an elegant kimono, emerged into the open air. She smiled down at the boy who bowed his head. Yeah, I know. I'd like to begin preparing for lunch, but with so many of us here I could use some help. Can you assist me? The boy nodded, shooting the pile of confused genin a glare before vanishing back into the house. Oh, thank you, Haku, Tsunami beamed. You're so wonderful with him. It's my pleasure, Tsunami-san, said Haku. She turned to Team 10 and continued, though it isn't quite my place to say, please make yourselves at home. Don't say that, Haku, Tsunami said with a smile. To Asuma she explained, Haku has been with us for about a week now. He's been keeping us safe from Gato and his men. The way you say it makes it seem like you didn't hire him, Asuma half asked, half stated. You're right, apparently it was someone else. I was nervous at first, but the security has made this past week so much more livable. Nami has been through so much recently. All of us have. I see. I'd love to hear more about your troubles, Asuma said kindly. Why don't we talk over tea? And he led the young mother inside, leaving 3 disgruntled genin to lay in the dirt. Okay, I know Asuma-sensei can be a pain sometimes, Choji said slowly, eyes still on the door, but you can't deny he has skill. Yeah, I suppose so, said Shikamaru. Can we please not talk about how much game our sensei has? Ino grumbled. Sakura, I know you're there. Help us up. And why would I do that? Asked the Pinkett, staring down at the group from her seat at the edge of the roof. She'd watched the entire scene play out from there, including noticing that Haku had noticed her there as well. The name was familiar, for sure, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Because we did that stupid chakra exercise you came up with the whole way here. Ino's words were laced with exhaustion. She wasn't exaggerating with what she said. Sakura had given the 3 of them coins to keep stuck to their hands and feet with chakra as they walked from the moment they entered Nami. Choji got more as he naturally had far more chakra than both Ino and Shikamaru combined, but they'd all run out before long. It was surprisingly draining of an activity, particularly while moving. And having an annoying pinkett occasionally attack your feet. Alright, you win. Good job team, Sakura said with a smile. And with that she jumped down, threw all three over her shoulder like sacks of potatoes, and carried them inside. It was inexplicable. Yagura reached out with a chakra-covered hand only to have it close on nothing. With a thought, coral sprouted across his opponent's body, but it simply crumbled away a moment later. Impossible. He was the Mizukage. He was the master of the three-tailed demon. He was practically fighting in the ocean. There was no one who should be able to stand up to his power. But he was undoubtedly losing. He knew that the demon's influence was beginning to take its toll. He could feel the rage infecting his being, empowering him further and deadening his awareness. But here he didn't care. All he could see was his opponent's red hair, bouncing around as he evaded attack after attack, only to strike back with unfathomable force. His change in appearance was a mystery, but it mattered little. He was going to die. Yagura saw red. Red, 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 red. 3 spinning black dots and so much red. Futon, Kami no Ken. Yagura's yell of pain was drowned out by the crack of air slamming on water, like a massive invisible fist had punched down from the sky onto him. Slowly the chakra cloak faded and Naruto paused, unsure of what would happen. It was clear that the Mizukage was on his last legs, but if he'd learned anything it was that all life was at its most dangerous just before it was about to die. Yagura slowly stood and Naruto froze as unmistakable red eyes regarded him. A chill ran through his body as Kurama's voice filled his mind in fury. Sharingan. I see it. Why does he have it? Where did you get those eyes? He asked aloud, not letting his expression show any of his inner shock. However, when Yagura answered, it was as though he was another person entirely. You are a problem, Uzumaki. Wherever you came from I do not know, but I will take this setback if it removes you from the equation. The beast can simply be recollected. Hands moved rapidly through a series of hand signs. His fingers began to light up with familiar chakra flames. The beast can be recollected? Is he Dash? Stop him. He's unsealing Isabu. Naruto moved as fast as he could only to be thrown back by the suddenly rough waves. Yagura stomped again, still moving through hand signs, and another series of waves moved to overtake him. This time Naruto was ready, parting them easily with wind chakra. Unfortunately, as the water fell to each side he was given just enough time to view Yagura slam a glowing hand into his stomach, his face still as blank as before. The blast knocked Naruto flying, skipping him across the water like a stone only for him to run aground and grind to a halt in the coarse sand. Groaning, he pushed himself to his feet, noticing right away that his special henge had finally dropped and he was every bit the kid he hoped no one noticed. At least he had the good sense to ditch Zabuza back at the village. A roar ripped across the water as a gargantuan turtle with 3 tails stood in the water, eyes filled with unbridled rage, staring at the stretch of land it hated more than any other. So let me get this straight. Mei took a steadying breath that only served to make every other person standing in the room with her more on edge. You lost them? Zabuza said nothing. He was dead either way, but this way he wouldn't need to admit having been duped with what had to have been some type of seal. At least the coup had been overwhelmingly successful. Yagura not being there had made things almost laughably easy, which only showed how weak of a nation they had become through this civil war. In case it wasn't glaringly obvious, Mei said slowly, I needed you to keep an eye on the Uzumaki in case he tried to make off with our bijou. They froze as a chill passed over them all. A wave of chakra swept through the village that they all knew to their core. This was not their Kage channeling the chakra of the 3 tails. It wasn't even him losing control of the beast. No, this was. The demon is free, one of the Jonin said in fear. The village will be wiped out. Get a hold of yourself, Mei snapped. Ao, rally our forces. Free prisoners, I don't care. We have bigger problems now than who should lead our village. Zabuza only lifted his foot off the ground by a hair when a well-manicured hand fell on his shoulder. Thank you for volunteering to lead the charge, Zabuza. Naruto ran to the shore but went no further. What was the use in charging out into what could only be his death? Arrogant mortals. You think you can contain me? I'll sink your island into the bottom of the sea. Isabu planted his feet and lowered his head. Wisps of dark chakra began gathering in front of his open mouth, forming a ball that only got bigger and bigger every second. Without hesitation, Naruto popped 4 more of his meditating clones at once. Then the attack was released. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Hundreds upon hundreds of Sage Mode clones appeared in a line, each visibly glowing with chakra as the attack came closer. They all brought their hands up. Then the first clone tried to catch it. The Bijadama tore through the clone like it wasn't even there, destroying it and the immediate area in a flash. Such was the fate of the next 100 Sage clones gone a second later. As he pushed to create even more, now 2 clones trying at a time, the attack simply would not break. And yet, the attack was losing momentum. Each clone destroyed bled a little bit off the attack speed, each able to stall it for a moment longer than the last until finally there was only one Naruto left. Unlike the clones, he didn't vanish in a flash of light, but instead was pushed back, feet digging lines into the ground as his chakra only barely kept him upright. The mountainous terrain that was once so far from the shore was getting alarmingly close. The village was only on the other side. With a massive heave he repelled the ball, rebounding it along the coast where it ripped a trench a kilometer long in the shore before detonating much further out in the bay. There was a moment of silence, then the shockwave hit him, knocking him over with little effort. Naruto barely had the energy to stand, let alone use chakra. His hands were a mess, but Kurama's chakra was already well on its way to healing them. A laugh escaped him as he realized what an insane thing he'd just done. With everything he'd been through in his previous life, that was subtly saying something. It was then that Naruto noticed something off. The ocean was much higher than it had any right to be. Higher and higher it rose until it towered over the immediate area by at least 100 feet. Of course that caused a tsunami. Lucky me. Naruto couldn't help but let out a rueful smile as the water approached. He was literally doing this for a couple of people he barely knew. Who didn't know him at all. If things went to plan, they'd never know. There were so many more who he wanted to help, who he needed to help, but chose to risk his life like this here. This made him outrageously stupid, didn't it? But they were the first people he'd wanted to help. The first people he'd really felt sad for losing. And Yuzu. So here he was. Surprisingly, Kurama was silent. Naruto thought that the Kyuubi would have been raging at him this entire time for not simply running away, but instead he was completely silent. What was he thinking, Naruto wondered. Instinctually his body braced for the impact of what amounted to a mountain being dropped on him. Instantly his world went black, the sensation of being chaotically thrown around all-consuming until suddenly, it wasn't. He was floating. Breathing? Naruto lay on his back, gently drifting to nowhere as he stared into the endless dark sky. He recognized the place, less by sight and more by feel. He'd been here before. In this exact place just once before. He closed his eyes as a weight fell upon his shoulders. Arms wrapped around him from behind, and a warmth he'd only felt once before filled him to his soul. Hi, my baby. Hey, Mom. The world suddenly righted and he was able to turn to face her, wincing lightly from the knuckles that she suddenly pressed into the top of his head. This was reckless of you, she admonished. You realize you'd be dead if not for the Kyuubi fixing your broken body. You might get your loudness from me, but the dumb ideas definitely come from your father. The joke at her own expense was enough to make him smile, but only just. I was worried you wouldn't come, he admitted. He'd been counting on it after all. You needed me, she returned with a shrug, as if that explained everything. Maybe it did. I know what you want to do. It's possible, but... You'll disappear, won't you? You know I'm not really here, she said with a smile, stroking his cheek gently. I'm just an echo. As long as you're safe it doesn't matter. Then why are you crying, he asked. She had no response to that. Will it work, he asked. Not the way you think, but yes, it should. I'll use everything I am to help you understand what it feels like. There's a lot more to it than just what you've seen and heard. Wait, so I'll be able to dash? It's not right for you to just have moves from your father, she interrupted. Consider this my inheritance. Kushina buried her face in his neck. Don't forget me, my baby. Then the world was golden. As Mei and her force crested the mountain, they were met with a scene from a war long past. The three-tailed beast was in the shallows, bound to the ground in golden chains that glowed with an inner light. A small figure stood at its side, waving up at them all. Proof enough he is an Uzumaki? Ao said roughly as the vast majority of the force breathed a collective sigh of relief. Most had expected to die that day in the defense of their home. What are you all waiting for? Secure the demon. Mizukage-sama, where will we seal it? You know I haven't been officially made the Mizukage, Mei protested, though anyone who heard could tell she didn't actually object to the title being used. It was obvious who would lead them all. Bring the boy. He is ready to accept this burden. As you wish. Mei quickly continued down to where the Uzumaki stood, hands behind his head in apparent peace. Looks like you won, he said as she finally stopped. A number of her jonin loosely surrounded the man, but he didn't seem to care. As did you. What happened? Yagura released him and killed himself in the process. Yeah, I know, Uzumaki said with a shrug at her clear disbelief. If it helps, I think he was under a genjutsu. He only did it once he realized that he'd never beat me. I was kicking his ass. And you aren't going to try and take the three tails? Mei asked. Any nation would sacrifice a fraction of its population to get such a war asset. And effectively declare war on Kiri? Yeah, pass. Okay, that was actually a fairly good reason. In that case, thank you. You've saved countless lives and... all of Kiri owes the Uzumaki a debt. Sure, just pay it forward or something, the Uzumaki said unconcernedly. See ya. And with a poof of smoke he completely disappeared. He was a clone, one of the nearby jonin said in shock. Damn, that clone had more chakra than I do. Don't let it get you down, Uzumaki are scary, said another. Now what? Now, said Mei, taking in the scene around her, I'll rebuild Kiri into what it was meant to be. There was an enormous problem. Kurenai sat with her head in her arms. A humongous, gigantic, titanic problem. She tried to speak, but it only came out as a pitiable groan of suffering. A problem so immensely colossal that she'd invited Anko out to her favorite restaurant despite its high prices and said Jonin's propensity to rack up obscene bills, just because she needed someone to talk to. So you've fallen in love with your... butler? What? Anko said in confusion, trying to understand the mess that was her best friend. No. The response was a whine of misery. Didn't you hear anything I just said? No, stupid, you've been moaning into your arms for the last hour, and I've just been running up your tab ordering booze and appetizers. We should do this more by the way. Anko took another sip of her sake and looked down at her friend. Go again from the beginning. Not into the table this time, she added, pushing Kurenai back into an upright position. The Jonin let out a tired breath before speaking in a demotivated voice. Over a week ago saw Kami. She was a wreck, she could barely say his name. When she finally did, it came out in a sort of low hiss. Sasuke Uchiha came to me asking him to train him in genjutsu. Right, she said suddenly as Anko's eyebrows rose. I thought it was ridiculous. I told him it was ridiculous, but he said he was willing to do anything to get me to teach him. Anything? See, even Anko couldn't resist saying it, though to be fair she would be the type who probably enjoys saying it. Okay, bad example. Yeah, so I said that I'd teach him if he became my servant for the next 2 weeks straight while he's on leave. I was trying to chase him off. He wasn't supposed to accept, she said in aggravation. Ukake. Anko said slowly, frowning now. So you've been having a snot-nosed genin follow you around for over a week doing whatever you tell him? That did not sound appealing in the slightest. How did you not tell him to piss off already? How do I explain this? Kurenai thought for a second before shaking her head. It would be easier for her just to experience it. Besides, she wanted to leave. She'd made enough of a fool of herself in public for the day. Servant. He appeared instantly at her side, head bowed with one arm bent in front of his body like usual. She didn't react at all to his appearance, but a number of people around them gave a start of surprise. Even more stared for the fact that there was now a fully decked-out butler in their midst. The heck? Anko said in shock, a hand halfway to a kunai. You called, Yuhi-sama, said the butler respectfully. Pay for our meal then return home and draw me a bath. Of course, he said politely, inclining his head once more. If I may, Yuhi-sama. Yes? I noticed you didn't eat at all during your time here. Can I prepare you something for after your bath? That would be lovely, thank you, she said with a smile. Seafood. Something heavy, I'm actually pretty hungry. As you wish. Will your friend be joining us? Most likely. Another bow and the butler walked to the nearest server who directed him bemusedly to where he could pay. A minute later he exited the restaurant. You're telling me that was? Yes. And he's been? Yes. Anko blinked before downing the remainder of her sake bottle in one go. It was hours later that the two kunoichi finished dinner in Kurenai's conspicuously well-maintained home. Following a long relaxing bath with her friend, they'd been treated to a mixed seafood dinner seasoned with fresh herbs. A simple meal, but done to the usual perfection she'd come to expect of her butler's meals. Anko, never having experienced one before, was predictably blown away. Now the two relaxed on the couch in the living room, Anko still taking in the odd sight around her. In all the times she'd been there, the place had never been so well taken care of. I think I can understand your problem, she said finally, but Kurenai was shaking her head. I don't think you do. Anko, he's literally better than Asuma at everything. He's better than any other guy I've dated. He's completely screwing with my expectations of men. I doubt everything, Anko said suggestively with a grin. Kurenai's deadpan did not reassure her at all. Would you believe me if I said I'm afraid to actually know the answer to that question? Anko's grin slid right off of her face as she glanced at the kitchen where the sounds of cleaning had long since stopped. The butler had disappeared after completing his work as completely as any veteran ANBU. Hey, servant. He appeared before she could fully finish the word. I didn't think you would come if I called you, Anko said, unknowingly saying what Kurenai was thinking. The genjutsu mistress was also determinedly telling herself that there was absolutely positively no fucking reason for her to become even the slightest bit annoyed that her servant had responded to Anko's call, even though he was supposed to be her servant and you are Yuhi-sama's guest, so I was only being polite and respecting her hospitality to you, the butler explained, inclining his head to Kurenai, who immediately felt her irritation dissipate. Was there something you both needed? Oh. Right. Enko considered the butler before continuing. If Nai asked you to bang her wadash, Enko was cut off as a pillow completely covered her face in an attempt to suffocate her. Tea. Kurenai said loudly, pressing the pillow down harder as the woman struggled underneath her. She's obviously had too much sake. Could you bring us some tea? Of course, the butler said, walking back into the kitchen, seemingly unaffected by what had just happened. Pa. Enko gasped for air as Kurenai finally released her. Okay. I probably deserve that. Don't do shit like that. Kurenai hissed. What if? She was unable to complete the sentence. For the first time that evening Enko felt genuine pity for her friend. They were best friends though, so she showed it in the only way she knew how. Huh, you are absolutely fucked, aren't you? It's just a few more days and then it's over, she said, eyes closed as she took a steadying couple of breaths. 3 days. What could possibly happen in 3 days? Enko just gave her a flat look. Kurenai let out a painful moan. The butler served them both tea and it was wonderful. Sakura smiled as she watched the clouds above her temporary home. It was another day of mixed weather in Nami. It could be beautiful one second then raining the next, and as with every other day for the last week, the time-traveling genin found herself with far more time to kill than she'd expected. Some days she guarded Tazuna as he and his small group of workers who hadn't quit yet continued on the bridge, and others she trained with her friends, but all of those days were conspicuously missing one important thing. Gato. There were no threats from Gato's men. No Zabuza trying to kill the bridge builder. No Hunter Nin accomplice for an assassination. It was like this timeline forgot that something important was supposed to be happening during this mission. Now she lay against the roof, keeping an ear out for anything out of the ordinary. Rapid approaching footsteps caught her attention far before they came into view, slapping the dirt path in a way that suggested a person running faster than they were comfortable with. Tazuna. Boss. A villager that Sakura hadn't seen before slid to a stop just before the door, narrowly avoiding faceplanting as he did so. A few seconds later the old man emerged from his home in his work clothing. He'd been preparing to head out to the bridge under her watch again. Now he regarded the newcomer with irritation. "The hell are you doing here, Shimizu?" he said shortly, crossing his burly arms. "Aren't you worried about Gato and his goons?" "It's true. You really haven't heard?" Shimizu said between long breaths. "Heard about what?" "Gato. He's gone." "What?" Tazuna's shout, loud enough to send birds into flight, nearly made Shimizu jump into the air. He didn't though, due to the slender hand of a young teenage girl holding his wrist in a grip of steel. "Shimizu-san, please tell us everything you know," Sakura said sweetly, making the man gulp audibly as he realized that he couldn't move at all. In no time the other occupants of the house were outside as well. Rumors about the Kiri civil war ending have been pulling into the dock for the past couple days, but apparently it's true, the man explained quickly. Gato must have known too because he and his enforcers all left right away. His eyes suddenly lit up in a way few did in this village of late. "Pretty soon we'll have trade through here like we did years ago." "If that's true then what are you standing around here for?" Tazuna said, whacking the younger man over the back of the head. "Go get the old crew back together and meet us on the bridge. Unless Gato scared the skills right out of your head." "No, yes, boss." As Shimizu ran off, finally freed from Sakura's grip, Ino said, "I don't get it. Why does what he said have anything to do with Gato leaving?" "Gato wants to squeeze money out of the village, but not at the cost of getting the attention of someone too big for him to handle," Shikamaru reasoned. "If Nami becomes a hub of trade like it should be again then there's bound to be someone important who won't like what he's doing." "Makes sense," said Choji. It is useful information, Asuma mused, scratching at his beard in thought. Worth passing to the old man for sure. I guess this means we'll be able to leave soon then. Soon? You can leave now, Tazuna grunted, eyes passing over Team 10. If I don't need kids following me like ducks to keep me safe, then I don't want them there. Fair enough, Asuma said with a shrug. They'd get paid the same with their mission having been completed. Ino fumed at yet another snub from the old drunk, but it was clear the others just didn't care. Tsunami gave an apologetic smile to the Jonin who just winked back, making her blush. Team 10, grab your gear and meet me at the dock. As the three genin more than happily moved to obey, Sakura lagged behind, eventually finding herself in the sole presence of the mysterious Haku. She'd been doing laundry with Tsunami and Inari, and even with her sleeves tied above her elbows and hair not as perfectly straight as usual, she was one of the prettiest girls she'd ever seen in her life. If it weren't for the distinct aura of deadliness she gave off, Sakura would swear she was a sweet-natured civilian. They stood in silence for some time, relaxing in the comfort of the nice weather, until Sakura finally spoke. Are you sure we haven't met? She said with a frown, taking in the softly smiling girl. Really, she gave the oddest sense of familiarity. I'm sure I would remember someone like you, Sakura-san, said Haku pointedly, and Sakura couldn't help but smile back. How long do you plan on staying here with them? She asked, curious. Not much longer, I imagine, Haku said, taking the moment to smooth out wrinkles in her kimono. Have a safe trip home. Thanks, you too. With that said, Sakura left in a shunshin, Haku blinking as she lost track of the young kunoichi in an instant. What's with that look? Anything happen? Haku shook his head, unsurprised by the gruff new arrival. Gato attempted to back out of the deal and run once he learned of your success in Kiri. A sideways glance was all the indication given the Jonin had even reacted to the news. And? I collected our contracted payment as initially agreed. Did you leave a message? Hi, Zabuza. Good work, kid. Let's get out of this dump, the demon of the mist grunted, turning his back on the village as he began walking to where he'd docked his boat. Haku just smiled. Woo. What's up, Konoha? Your favorite blonde BMF is back. Back? Where did you go? Naruto froze with his arms up in the air, turning to find a group of masked ANBU staring at him from beside a taiyaki stand. The other side of the village? The three ANBU exchanged looks before shaking their heads and vanishing in a poof of smoke. Hey, kid, the circus called and they want their idiot back, another villager said with a smirk, getting a similar one from his friend. Why do I look out for this village again? Naruto mused to himself, absently giving both the one-fingered salute before taking off in a burst of speed. He wanted to see if he could find Sasuke or Sakura, but first he wanted to do something. It only took a few minutes to reach his destination, the stone head of his father jutting out of the cliff. When he was younger he'd come there to think and dream. Now he used it mainly to reminisce. I dunno, Dad, he said to himself, looking out at the sprawling vista. I still can't say you made the right call. It wasn't about being capable. Naruto had always been able to pull through no matter what he did, usually by the skin of his teeth, but still he pulled through. Instead it was about his choices, even more so now that he had a younger version of his psyche mixed in with his own. There was impulsiveness there that worried him, recklessness that set him on edge. In the end, Sakura and Sasuke had been there to help keep him grounded, but now he was flying through the air like a leaf on the wind. His trip back to Konoha was one of quiet reflection. He wasn't particularly proud of what he decided to do in the end. A part of him still regretted even raising a hand against a fellow Jinchuriki. A part of him felt like Yagura had gotten off easy. There was no doubt that Obito had a hand in the former Mizukage suicide, but that knowledge was little more than an interesting detail in the grand scheme of things. More significant was the fact that Kiri would be building their strength again, and they were aware of a powerful survivor of Yuzu. It would keep them wary at the very least. I expected something more of your lineage. Goaded as he was by Yagura, Naruto hadn't used any Uzumaki sealing techniques during their fight. He knew a fair few, having collected and trained them in the years following the Fourth War, but to this day he'd never used one in combat. After finally visiting Yuzu, seeing the ruin of his ancestral home, he'd felt decidedly less Uzumaki. It was ironic that after being so frustrated with Sasuke for being so caught up with his clan and its resurrection, things that nearly contributed to the end of the world as they knew it, that Naruto would so suddenly cling to a sense of debt with his own. As a result, he decided not to actively use the Uzumaki techniques he learned until he felt that he'd made a good start at rebuilding what had once been. Then his mother had to go and throw that out the window. Palm up, Naruto focused for a second before a small golden chain an inch long seemingly emerged from his hand, swaying lightly in the breeze. Imagine if I'd been able to do this the first time around. It wasn't like he'd become a sudden master of the technique. It was only due to his mother's echo expending all of her chakra that he was able to properly use the chains to their fullest extent, restraining a tailed beast. Now he just had the feeling to go off of, but damn if it wasn't a feeling he liked embracing. Nothing else in his life had ever so strongly reminded him of his mother. The chain dissipated into motes of gold and he stood, finally feeling back to his usual self. For a brief moment he embraced nature chakra and searched the village for his friends. Kakashi was still gone, as was Sakura, much to his confusion. The former was likely still on his mission, but where had his pink-haired teammate gotten off to? Sasuke, however, was both in the village and actually fairly close by. In fact, he seemed to be with Kiba, Shino, and Hinata at the moment. What were they up to, he wondered. Seriously, where did Kurenai-sensei find this guy? Kiba said in exhaustion, leaning on his knees to stay upright. He is certainly suspicious, Hinata said between deep breaths. Shino said nothing, but that was because it was Shino. As the three gathered themselves, the stylish butler that stood across from them waited patiently. Though there was a good deal of dirt and dust that had kicked up from the 3-versus-1 fight that had been taking place, the butler's attire was immaculate. "Are you ready for your final assessment?" the butler asked, and the genin of Team 8 slowly nodded their assent as they had become accustomed to doing over the last few days. "Very well. Shino, you have improved your taijutsu greatly over the last few days, but still fall back on your insects far too quickly when overwhelmed. Consider looking into more escape options that won't put your hive at risk." The insect user nodded after a moment of thought, bowed, and walked to the side of the field where his sensei waited to give her own suggestions. "Kiba, your physical offense is very impressive for a genin, but lacks versatility. Consider adding in mid to long-range options, or," the butler added as Kiba made to interrupt, "ways to close the distance between you and your opponent that aren't just running fast." "Yeah, I'll ask my sister," he said, scratching the back of his head. "Come on, Akamaru." "Hinata." The girl gave a start as the butler addressed her. "Your strengths are clear and I believe you already know the weakness you possess." "Why yes," said the shy genin, eyes cast to the ground. "Though the Juken is powerful, the Hyuga are predictable because of it, as you've pointed out repeatedly." "Very much so," the butler agreed. "Being faster and stronger than your opponent will help any shinobi win their battles, Juken or not, which makes this a shallow priority for someone with a limited skill set like yours. Expand it. Remember that every weakness you address now is a teammate's life you may save in the future." High. "Good work you three, you're dismissed. Tomorrow we'll get a mission," Kurenai said with a smile, highly pleased with her genin. They'd been working exceptionally hard the past few days, largely in part to her unendingly talented servant stepping in to give some personal training. At her request, of course. "Sensei, that guy is just gone. Shino's interruption had them all looking back at the field, which was as empty as when they got there earlier in the day. He's gotta be some weird ANBU or something, Kiba said after a few seconds. The team let out a collective breath and began their trek home. Or something, thought Kurenai tiredly, staring at the empty training ground. She waited until she was alone before calling out. Servant. Nothing happened. Servant? He did not appear. The sinking feeling in the pit of Kurenai's stomach multiplied as she realized what day it was. What time it was. The 2 weeks had officially ended. Her servant was gone. Sasuke gave a grunt as he stretched. Being in a henge for 2 weeks straight without breaks wasn't the worst thing in the world for someone like him, but it definitely could give you cramps. Sasuke. The Uchiha winced internally. He essentially had gone off the grid for 2 weeks. Sakura was out with Team 10, but he could have at least checked up on Naruto once or twice. Naruto, he said in greeting as the brightly clad genin ran up to him with a megawatt grin. Hey, it feels like it's been ages, the blonde said. Whatcha been up to lately? Just a personal project, Sasuke said with a shrug, brushing it off. I'm trying to secure genjutsu training. Makes sense, not like you can work with someone from your clan, Naruto frowned. It's fine, I've been training with Team 8 to build some goodwill with their sensei. Oh, that's a great idea. Kurenai is crazy good at genjutsu. Naruto shook off his surprise at Sasuke so readily looking for help in the village for training. He'd long since come to grips with the fact that this version of Sasuke was way more easygoing than the original, but sometimes this kind of stuff caught him off guard. Yeah, that's why I asked. Hope she says yes then. By the way, you wouldn't happen to know where Sakura got off to, do ya? I've looked all over the village and can't find her. Really? Said Sasuke before shaking his head. Trust Naruto to likely spam an army of clones to look for someone in the village instead of just going to the girl's house and asking her parents. Well, it makes sense, she left with Team 10 on a mission out of the village. I'm sure she'll be back soon though, Kakashi-sensei should be done any day now. What? I'm the only one who wasn't working with another team? What have you been working on? Sasuke asked, curious. This Naruto outclassed the one he'd grown up with on many levels, despite being the same number 1 hyperactive knucklehead ninja. I've been trying to up my Uzumaki, Naruto said evasively, still grinning. I'll show you all when Kakashi-sensei gets back. Whatever you say, Sasuke said with a shrug. Dango? Naruto blinked a few times before shaking his head. I don't know why you're different, but I honestly hope you stay this way, he said, leading the way. Sasuke couldn't help but grin as he fell into step beside him. Same here, Naruto, same here. The food was good. The company was better. All in all, it was a nice way to shake up what he'd been doing recently. It took him a second to realize why when he'd started walking home that he eventually found himself in front of Kurenai's apartment instead. Well, I do need to talk to her anyway. The door was unlocked, and he saw her immediately. No time like the present, as they say. He walked over to her and began speaking. The 2 weeks are over. Our deal is done. Now we can. Sasuke stalled out as he took in the jonin seated on the couch who was hugging a pillow to her chest. She was openly sobbing. Are you okay? You've ruined my life. That's a ridiculous exaggeration. I don't remember how to live properly from before this. I don't see how that's my fault. My expectations for guys are way too high now. I'll take that as a compliment. Sasuke cast her a flat look. You didn't have to be that good of a servant. It doesn't even make sense in the first place. Kurenai got to her feet, pointing at the genin with sudden energy. You've caused this entire mess. How do you plan to take responsibility? Sasuke just put a palm to his face. You know this isn't that kind of anime, right? Huh? Just give me a second. After returning to the village, he honestly tried to do as his blonde brother in all but name encouraged him to. Even more so now that he seemed to have a second chance at it all. Enjoy his life. After nearly 10 years of dedication to nothing but a single-minded vengeance, he had no idea where to begin. Naruto and Sakura changed that. Slowly, gradually, they pulled him out of a dark shell he didn't know he lived within. Years later he could comfortably smile at the antics of his two close friends. Whenever he felt like it, of course. And so playing the mysteriously skilled butler was just another way that he could do something different. Something not rooted in hate and death. How could he have possibly known he'd grow to actually enjoy being around Kurenai? Through the detached attitude she'd failed to maintain over the last 2 weeks, he'd found out more about her than he had about anyone else in over 2 decades of life. In his effort to sell the act, he'd learned her habits, dedicated himself to improving her life, and came out of it feeling somewhat fond of the woman. It's an idea, but would she want to do it? On a certain level it seemed impossible. He was barely 13. The fully grown version of him she'd gotten used to was a henge, nothing more. But it was nice. He'd felt a little taste of contentment that usually he could only get by spending time around his two friends. So, move in with me. Whatever comedy act Kurenai had been in the throes of suddenly died a swift death. Move in with you, she repeated slowly. Become my housemate, he clarified. I'll keep doing a bunch of things like I have been, but as a favor to us living together. In return you have to stay there for at minimum the duration that you teach me everything you know about genjutsu. Of course, he added to her silent look, you can go back to how things were before our agreement in the tree. You will still be teaching me genjutsu regardless. I did what you asked after all. Fun aside, he absolutely needed this strength to accomplish his goals. Silence stretched on as Kurenai considered the genin with a frown, sounds of birds outside her window reminding everyone of the warm months that were still to come. What about this place? Too small for both of us, said Sasuke. I won't ask for rent or anything, I own my home, so you can still keep this place without issue. He motioned to the door with an open hand. Would you like to see it? Naruto whistled to himself as he walked about the village after splitting up from Sasuke. He was, surprisingly, out of things to do for once. Oh sure, there was plenty to do, but he'd never been the most patient person if it didn't have to do with training. Hey, Naruto. Here for a bowl? Seriously, he needed to stop walking to Ichiraku's when his mind wandered. The idea of being even a little predictable gave him shivers. Hey Nei-chan, why not, he replied, pulling himself onto his favorite stool. Ayam just gave him a wide smile before moving to make his food. Well now, there's my best customer. We've been missing you recently. Tucci emerged from the back rooms with a wooden box in his arms. How's it been, Naruto? Great, old man. Naruto answered in cheer. Kakashi-sensei should be done with his mission really soon and then Team 7 is back in action. Still have today off though. How's business? Booming, the man said, equally cheerful. The way things are now, I'll have a store twice this size in a couple years. Maybe when there's a bit more space behind the counter you'll come spend some time back here yourself. Dad, I'm not marrying Naruto, Ayam said in a deadpan, much to her father's chagrin, placing a bowl in front of the genin. No offense, Naruto. None taken, he said with a lazy hand wave, already focused on his food. Ayam just continued on regardless, rolling right over whatever her father had begun saying as well. He doesn't have any family to support him. Ouch, but pretty true. Or money. Slurp, also true. And no one in the village likes him. It's bad enough for business that we let him eat here. Gulp, I am nay. Besides, odds are I'd be widowed before even having 2 kids. You know how risky it is to be with a shinobi. Really starting to forget why I come here all the time. Well, he'd protect you with his life, Teuchi said finally. Naruto paused his eating for a moment to take a glance at a cat lazing on the other side of the street, face turned to the ramen shop. Looking away, its ears twitched momentarily in a signal the genin knew well. No issues. Already am, he said, now continuing his meal. I am just giggled, giving him an incredibly fond smile. Okay, I give up, Teuchi sighed, shaking his head as he walked off. I'll be cleaning in the back if you need me. I am just watched him go with a shake of her head. Give him a month, he'll try again. Can't blame him, really, Naruto said in understanding, putting his chopsticks next to the empty bowl. He nodded contentedly, eyes closed. I'm pretty much top of the list, wherever you go. You don't say? I smiled, happy to humor him as she got him another serving. Sure, she wasn't really interested in marrying the village outcast, but that didn't mean she didn't love him all the same. In a little brotherly runt who's also got a world-ending fox demon inside him kind of way, of course. He also really would beat the ever-living shit out of anyone that messed with her or her dad. Had done it, too. It sufficed to say they were quite safe in the day-to-day. I mean, most of those girls just don't know it yet, but I can say with absolute certainty there is at least one girl in this village who only got eyes for this guy, he continued, thumbing himself in the chest. That I think. Not that he had any idea really what to do with it. Having his emotions severely mixed around with his 12-year-old self aside, Hinata was the only person in this new timeline that he was hesitant to interact with. They'd been dating for a few years when the time skip back happened, and in that time their relationship had unfolded into something that a regular couple might accept as very close friends. With Hinata's demeanor, and his lack of knowledge about anything that wasn't a Rasengan, there had been more than a few bumps along the way, but it was clear to each other that they cared. It was nice in a way neither had really experienced before. Heck, it probably wasn't long until they tried to start a family. If anyone were to ask, they'd probably think he was grateful at the opportunity to jumpstart their relationship. To build a stronger one that he liked even more. But they weren't the same person. The Hinata he'd come to like was the girl who'd grown up with him. The girl who'd survived the 4th Shinobi War and buried so many of her clan. The girl who he'd gone on dozens of missions with and grown close to. The girl who'd grown past her insecurities into someone fierce but still so gentle and caring. The girl who'd genuinely accepted his being a Jinchuriki, and wasn't afraid of being in a relationship with one. This Hinata, for all her potential, was not that girl. If he tried to force her along, she wouldn't be that girl. Faced with that, he couldn't think of her as anything but long gone, just like everyone else he knew. It was the only way he'd been able to move past it all. Back off, asshole. Ayame and Naruto exchanged a blinking look before turning as one to face the source of the commotion. Lo and behold, the object of his thoughts was standing amidst the other genin of her team in the middle of the road. Shino was a bit off to the side while Kiba stood directly in front of Hinata, teeth bared at who Naruto instantly recognized as Guy's Team 9. Lee and Tenten were standing a bit back, both tense, while Niji stood impassively in front of Kiba. His pale eyes showed nothing but contempt for everything in front of him. Remove yourself from my sight, mongrel, the boy said coolly. You have no business meddling in something that does not concern you. Kiba, please it's dash, but Hinata's small voice was instantly drowned out by Kiba's. No way, he snapped, causing the girl to flinch back a bit. Listen fuckface, I don't care who you are. No one talks to my teammates like that. Does clan business mean nothing to the Inazaka? I will say it once more, remove yourself before I do it for you. If anything, Kiba became even more enraged. Small bursts of chakra emanated from his body as his control slipped. Try it, you white-eyed ba dash, the word was only half out of Kiba's mouth when he was suddenly choking. His eyes widened marginally as he realized he'd been struck in the middle of his chest with an open palm. Staggering back into Hinata, he raggedly caught his breath, eyes refocusing on the Hyuga in front of him. Niji had barely moved, only a single hand extended in front of him indicating he'd attacked at all. Niji Nai-san. Hinata cried in shock. Continue to insult me and I will be forced to further correct your behavior. Naruto turned away from the scene with a sigh, his gaze once more falling upon the wonderful ramen he'd been making sweet love to not a moment before. He really didn't want to deal with Niji just yet and it was still his day off. Shino, no. Please stop. Naruto's eyelid twitched. Twice. Nei-chan, I'll be right back, I promise, he grumbled to the girl behind the counter. To this she just smiled. I'll keep it warm for you, Naruto. If only every girl were as nice as I am, Nei-chan, he thought. Absently, turning to hop off the stool. It seemed as though the two teams were squaring up for an actual fight. Except Hinata, of course. She seemed overwhelmed by the entire series of events. Tenten and Lee, as much as they might ever disagree with anything Niji did, would never leave him to fight alone if threatened. Hey, cut it out. The tension, which was rather thick, stalled out somewhat at the new voice. Naruto moved next to the two teams, not putting his back to either, though he kept his eyes on Niji. And Naruto? Hinata's surprised voice carried easily over Kiba's low growl. How about we try not to kill each other right next to my favorite place to eat, the orange-clad genin said lightly, jerking his thumb at Ichiraka ramen. Another nuisance, Niji muttered, pale eyes barely acknowledging his presence. Hinata-sama, Hayashi-sama would be disappointed to see the type of people you are surrounding yourself. We are all Leaf Shinobi, Naruto interrupted flatly. Whatever you think, that fact won't ever change. And yet your fate will always be that of the second rate. Less. Oh man, I can't believe people let you walk around like this, Naruto muttered to himself, pinching the bridge of his nose. I honestly forgot how much of a pain in the ass you used to be. I don't really want to right now, but I'll take you back to school if I need to. A dropout like you couldn't touch a hair on my head. What was that? This last comment was directed right to Niji's face. Translation: Naruto slapped Niji across the face. Now, to be fair, it was a very light slap. The Hyuga probably barely felt any pain from it whatsoever. However, the fact that he'd been slapped was no less real, as evident by the utter shock in his expression. Lee. I know. Lee. I know. But he just got slapped. I know, Tenten. Across the face. I saw it, I saw it. What's wrong, Niji? Naruto leaned in with a shit-eating grin on his face. Didn't see it coming? A flash of rage crossed the genin's face and he reached to grab the infuriating blonde by the scruff of his shirt only to suddenly find himself on his back with said blonde staring down at him. The foot that rested on his chest felt like lead. He couldn't move even if he wanted to. Look, said Naruto with a sigh, ignoring the shocked expressions around him, I don't know why you're so angry all the time, but stop taking it out on Hinata so much. Take it from the orphan. Treat your family better. You don't know anything, Niji bit out, scowling at him. Nothing about my family. Nothing about what I've been forced to sacrifice for my family. The word was bit out with a sneer. You really want to talk to me about sacrifice? Naruto's shadowed face seemed almost made from stone before it passed and a tired and frustrated expression replaced it. You know, I remember you from when we first joined the academy, Niji. I looked up to you as someone who was always so strong. No one could take you down, and you graduated top of the class while I failed. Now look at you. Under my foot. He leaned in on it momentarily for emphasis. You wanna bend over and let the world make you its bitch? Fine. Just don't take it out on your friends. Naruto stepped back, reaching down and pulling the speechless Hyuga to his feet. Satisfied he hadn't left any damage on the genin, the blonde turned to the other members of Team 9. "Hey Lee, Ten, sorry about this," Naruto apologized, giving the two dumbstruck genin a nod. "I'm glad you three are still a team. Let's train together sometime. Bye everyone. Remember, no fighting in front of Ichiraku Ramen." With that he waved them off and returned to the ramen booth with a look of pure joy on his face. "Lee?" "Yes, Ten. What the heck just happened? I honestly do not know." "Kakashi. Welcome back." A collective assortment of greetings met him as he joined the tables of Jonin with drinks in front of them. Most turned back to their conversations, but some broke off for a more personal greeting. "My eternal rival." Guy clapped the copy ninja on the shoulder and handed him a drink that Kakashi looked down at with a single raised eyebrow. "Your mission was a success, yes?" "Huh. Ha ha ha." Guy laughed cheerily, during which Kakashi handed the drink to a nearby drunk patron. They downed it in one, and almost immediately went unresponsive, slumping on their table. "That hip attitude again. Welcome back my friend. You know I'm almost sad that you're back," Asuma said, surprising the Jonin. "Sakura from your team has been tagging along with mine for the last 2 weeks for fun, I guess?" "Guy, I know you think that Hyuga from your team is the strongest genin in the village, but Kakashi's girl would serve his ass for dinner any day. She's like a little Anbu or something." "Umbu?" Kakashi said bemusedly. "I can't help but disagree," Guy said boisterously, shaking his head while simultaneously drinking his tea. The group of Jonin watched unblinkingly as he somehow did so without spilling a drop. If there is one who could beat Niji, then it can only be young Naruto Uzumaki. I witnessed a most unyouthful interaction between the two, but Naruto won and ended their confrontation handily. It was an impressive display of strength. "He did?" This time Kakashi turned his blinking eye to Guy. "You're both wrong." Everyone turned to Kurenai, who was seated on a tall stool with her legs crossed, a drink far larger than any of theirs in her hand. "It's the Uchiha on his team that's the strongest by far. He has outrageous Shinobi skills," she said quickly, coughing before downing most of her glass. They all watched her with slightly raised eyebrows as she looked into the glass, finished it, then said something under her breath that sounded like, "What is my life?" Hiya? What the heck happened while he was gone? Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. Guys, make sure to help the author by visiting the link in the description. This is Fox Sage, and I'm signing off.